Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Miami Total Football Radio, the show. As you can see, as you will hear, as you are hearing, it's just me, myself, and I here on this week's episode. Franco Panizo, your usual co-host. My other co-hosts are covering baseball right now. I don't want to say they didn't watch yesterday's game because maybe they did from their phone. I don't know. But they were at Marlins, Lone Depot Park, the Marlins Stadium yesterday to cover Venezuela versus the Dominican Republic, which was big news here in South Florida, but obviously a completely different sport. So they are out for today's show. It's just me and you guys, and we've got plenty to talk about, of course, because Inter Miami is fresh off a goalless draw with Nashville SC in the first leg of their Concacaf Champions Cup series, which makes next week's decisive leg full of tension because it could mean Inter Miami gets eliminated if they don't get the result that they need. So we'll talk about that, of course. We will talk about Inter Miami's attacking struggles, as you can see from the title of this week's episode. We'll be talking a good bit about what's going on with the attack because it's not looking or clicking like it has in other times. Of course, we will preview the upcoming game against Charlotte FC, which, for being honest, is probably a throwaway game at this point. I don't know if we could. I think it was FC Dallas last year that Inter Miami did something similar with, where they rotated heavily and then they ended up losing that game, although they were in front. But they had they had their eye on a bigger prize, bigger fish to fry. So we'll talk about all of those things. We'll also talk about the most recent MLS game, which was Inter Miami versus DC United. And that's actually where we will start here on this episode of Miami Total Football Radio, the show, because I think it will make it'll make more sense to do it this way, especially with the topics that we're going to talk about. So Inter Miami traveled to the nation's capital. We talked last week with Alonso Contreras, our other co-host, about the White House visit. I don't know if I used the word surreal last week. I meant to, but I don't know if I did. And it was surreal. It was surreal. Without getting into all of the topics that we talked about last week, it was surreal. The visit was very surreal to see those worlds collide. But Inter Miami was in the nation's capital for a match. They played DC United in Baltimore, not in Washington, D.C. They took the game to M&T Bank Stadium, home of the Baltimore Ravens. Inter Miami won 2-1. Goals from Rodrigo de Paul and Lionel Messi, both golazos. DC United pulls one back in the second half, and it made for a nervy finish, or a nervier finish than needed to be for Inter Miami. So we'll start with this one because, again, let's go in chronological order based on what we've seen over the last few days. The first half of that game was very good for Inter Miami, in my opinion. From my seat, my analysis, I thought the team picked up where it left off in the previous match against Orlando City, which, again, we saw Inter Miami score 4 second-half goals, if memory serves me correct. So Inter Miami scores 2, and they looked like they were going to overwhelm DC United. They looked better. They looked like they were firing on, I don't want to say all cylinders, but they were firing on more cylinders. And it just looked like a team full of talent versus an overmatched opponent. And it looked like it could have been una goleada. It looked like it could have been a rout. But it's not how the game ends up being. The second half is completely different. Inter Miami struggles to the finish line. Ty Barribo scores in the 75th minute, but Inter Miami just kind of lost the control. They lost their rhythm. They lost the flow and the attacking edge that they had. We could look at tactics and say maybe DC United started throwing numbers forward, so Inter Miami naturally dropped back a bit in response. You could talk about individual performances. But I think just in general, overall, bigger picture, the team's just not at the level it needs to be. It's not consistent enough. It is not sharp enough. Some players are not maybe even fit enough to where you would like to be. It is early weeks in the season, but early weeks in the season coincide with the Concacaf Champions Cup, which is Inter Miami's stated goal for this year. So don't have a lot of time, and they can't serve as excuses. You got to get going and get going fast, especially if you have aspirations to be the champion of the regional tournament. But in this MLS, in this league game, week 3, Inter Miami gets outshot actually by DC United. DC United with 10 shots, Inter Miami 6, 5 shots on target to Inter Miami's 4. Of course, naturally, as you'd expect, Inter Miami won the possession battle 60-40. But a tale of two halves, a different game in each half. And you could see that even though it was a win, even though it was 3 more points for Inter Miami to give them 6 on the season, the way the game ended, they weren't in a jovial mood. It wasn't smiles and big euphoric celebrations. It was more of a win that probably didn't feel too much like a win, because the camera, Apple TV broadcast catches Messi just go straight to the locker room. No exchanges, no pleasantries with anyone, at least on the field. Don't know about in the tunnel, but no, not on the field. After the final whistle, he immediately goes to the dressing room. You see Rodrigo de Paul. The camera's focuses in on him, zooms in on him, and he's also I don't know if dejected is the right word, but looked like he was lamenting himself a little bit because he missed a glorious chance to put the game away in stoppage time. It was 2-1, obviously, and he has a fantastic, a golden chance to make it 3-1 and end the game. A ball across the ground in front of the net, and he skies it over. Look, he's not a 9, he's not a finisher. No es un goleador, but you would expect him to put that one away, especially if he's a DP. You got to put that one away. Thankfully for Inter Miami, thankfully for Rodrigo de Paul, it did not come back to bite them. They were able to see it out, but they struggled to do so. I don't want to say they suffered, but les costó. It was not easy for them against one of the teams that, on paper, probably is amongst the weakest in the Eastern Conference. Let's listen to Javier Mascherano talk about that game. This is a quote, una declaración from his post-game press conference where he talks about when Inter Miami does not have control, they're not dictating the tempo, they don't have possession, you can tell that they're uncomfortable. You can tell that they're not pleased with that style of play. So let's listen to Mascherano, because again, this will lead us into the last few days.
No, bueno, claramente que necesitamos, yo creo que un equipo necesita mejorar constantemente. Está claro que en nosotros si hay algo que no tenemos es conformismo, tratamos de evolucionar todo el tiempo, tratar de ayudar a los jugadores en que cada día seamos mejores como equipo. Y bueno, creo que sobre todo hoy, la primera parte, el hecho de ponernos por delante, que no nos había pasado en liga, es lo que tratamos de buscar. Ahora, un poco lo que hablamos de este partido, tratar de cerrarlo de una mejor manera, tratar de quizás, no porque hemos sufrido demasiados, pero sí la sensación de no tener el control del partido para nosotros es rara, porque somos un equipo que suele tener el control de los partidos y cuando no lo tenemos se nos nota a disgusto. Entonces, eso es algo que tenemos que mejorar, porque bueno, en el segundo tiempo nos costó mucho tener el control del partido, hemos cedido mucho terreno, eh, más allá de no sufrir demasiadas situaciones, eh, pero bueno, es algo a tener en cuenta y que tenemos que nosotros como cuerpo técnico buscarle la vuelta para ayudar a los jugadores.
So Mascherano, for those of you who don't speak Spanish or understand it, says at the beginning of that a lot of coach talk, which was, we're a team that doesn't conform. We're always looking to improve. We're always looking to get better, yada, yada, yada. About the middle half of that, a little bit past the halfway point, he starts getting into the being uncomfortable or being displeased or not being at ease when they are not the team in control of possession, and how they need to improve in that aspect. That he thought that against DC United, that maybe even though they didn't have the possession they wanted, they didn't suffer all that much. And what he meant, what I'm assuming he meant reading between the lines, is obviously that they didn't give away. He does say, actually mention it, he does say that they didn't give up a whole lot of goal scoring opportunities. So they didn't suffer because they didn't give up a whole lot of goal scoring opportunities, even though they lost some control of the match, even though they were not in possession of the ball for stretches against DC United that was pushing for, obviously, for the equalizer, and trying to get back in the game throughout that second half. He says it's something that the coaching staff has to take into account and they've got to try to correct going forward so that they can help the team in a better fashion. Obviously, that's something that has to be corrected because against higher level opposition, you're probably not going to get away with just conceding the ball if you're Inter Miami. This is not a team that is built to grind out 1-0 victories. It's not, they're not constructed in that way. The money is in, well, the attack, Berterame, Messi, DePaul in the midfield, but the big money is not at the back. This is not a defensive juggernaut. This is a team that wants to outscore you, outpossess you, outplay you. So clearly they're going to have to be sharper with the ball in more important games. Well, they had a more important game 4 days later against Nashville SC, familiar foe. Nashville SC. This is the 5th time they've played since the end of last season, right? There was the regular season finale against Nashville, and then there was a best of 3 series that went all 3 games. And now a 5th match against Nashville SC, with the 6th one looming next week here in Fort Lauderdale for the return leg. And Inter Miami played to a 0-0 draw in this match, in this first leg. So no away goals were scored by Lionel Messi. No away goals were scored by Inter Miami. That is a tough pill to swallow because this competition is still one of the few, if not the only one in the entire world professionally, that still counts away goals in the 2-legged series. So what does that mean? I mean, if you're a soccer person, you know. If you're new to the sport, this means that if Inter Miami ties next week by anything less, or anything more than 0-0, so a 1-1 draw, a 2-2 draw, a 3-3 draw, they would be eliminated because the tiebreaker, despite the fact that Nashville and Inter Miami would have equal goals, is away goals. Away goals count for 2. So in that sense, Nashville SC would prevail. Nashville SC has an extra out or an extra ability to advance, right? They can advance just by winning the game, and they can advance by tying. Inter Miami cannot advance by tying unless it's a 0-0 draw and they go to extra time or penalty kicks. So Inter Miami pretty much has to win this game next week. It's going to be do or die time. Already, they're going to have a very high pressure game at this point in the season. At this point in the season, they're not looking that good. Now, look, I'm going to leave this clear 15 minutes into the show before we dive into more and the criticisms and the analysis. I fully expect Inter Miami to advance. If they don't, it would be a tremendous failure on the part of Javier Mascherano, Lionel Messi, the whole team, if they don't advance. Because this is their stated big goal. Words from Jorge Mas's mouth dating back to the MLS Cup final. This is what they built the team for. So already a massive test. We will preview that game more thoroughly next week once this weekend gets by and once Inter Miami's played Charlotte FC. We see what other developments are there. We have to see about the health of Maximiliano Falcón because he comes out of this game against Nashville SC with an early injury. There has been no update from the team besides the fact that he would undergo medical examinations. It looked to be his knee. Can't confirm that, but it looked to be his knee. Mascherano said after the game that Peluca, as he's known in these parts, or Wig, because of his hair, he's a tough guy. And if he's coming out of the game, it's because he feels something. Mascherano added that he hoped it was something minor, but that they would make that determination after the exams. I mean, it didn't look good. You know, he was able to walk off under his own power, but the way he lamented it, his body language and facial expression, it didn't read like it is something super short term. I would be surprised, with not any inside information other than what I just said, I would be surprised if he plays next Wednesday. I'd be surprised. I think he's probably going to be out for a little bit. How much? I don't know. We don't know the severity, but I don't know if he'll be able to have such a quick turnaround. Maybe he will. If he does, it's a big boost for Inter Miami. If he doesn't, things start to create a perfect storm of such, because again, Inter Miami got no away goals, and now they could be down a center back in a very pressure-packed match. Gonzalo Lujan was the player that was chosen by Javier Mascherano to come into the game at center back for Peluca Falcon against Nashville SC in this last game. Look, for me, Gonzalo Lujan hasn't been overly impressive since joining Inter Miami last season. He's had his okay games. He's had his, solid performances, but few and far between. I think his time has been more highlighted by mistakes and subpar showings. I mean, there was a point last year, at the end of last year, where I don't think he was even seeing much of the field. But he was the one chosen. Could have been Ian Frey. Because Ian Frey did not start against Nashville SC. Ian Frey was on the bench. Facundo Mura got the start again at right back. Should it have been Ian Frey? I could see a case being made, because Ian Frey is a natural center back, and I think in the few spells that he's played there in recent times, I think he hasn't looked off the pace. I think he's looked good there, serviceable there. But Mascherano went with Lujan, and Lujan fared decently enough yesterday. Didn't make any mind-blowing blunders, didn't make any huge mistakes, but Inter Miami as a whole last night, Wednesday night, was a bit fortunate that they're playing a team in Nashville SC that does not have that much quality in the final third. And I know that people are going to say that I'm talking nonsense, gibberish, bollocks, mierda, crap, shit, whatever you want to put it, because Nashville SC has Hani Mukhtar, they have Sam Sturridge, who scored 20 goals last season, and they have Christian Espinosa, the Argentine winger that was formerly with the San Jose Earthquakes. There's talent there, no doubt. There's talent there, but that's not the most lethal front three. I'm actually not big on Sam Sturridge at all, and if he were a level or two higher in quality, then I think Inter Miami would have been in a huge hole, because he had opportunities last night to really put Inter Miami behind the eight ball, and he wasn't able to. Right? There's one shot, there's a cross that comes in, I think from the right. He's open inside the box. He makes good contact, but he shoots it pretty much down the middle. Dane St. Clair isn't overly exerted there, and Dane St. Clair makes the save. If Surge had put any type of direction on the shot, Inter Miami's down 1-0 in this game, and an even bigger hole heading into next week's return leg. I'm not huge on Sam Sturridge. I've said that since last season. I said it last night. I mean, physically, he's got some real good tools. Footballistically, or futbolisticamente, or from a soccer standpoint, I think he looks a bit clumsy, not the most technical. So Inter Miami can thank their stars that Nashville couldn't find their finishing boots last night, that they couldn't make good on the chances they had, because they had chances. They had chances to take the lead more so than Inter Miami. I mean, let's be frank. And Javier Mascherano wasn't grilled in the press conference yesterday by the media in attendance in Nashville, or the couple of questions that he got on Zoom. I did not get a question, so but he didn't really get grilled. That game yesterday was poor. They got a result. They come back with a 0-0 draw. They didn't give up a goal. But Mascherano always says that he analyzes the performances, not the results. He constantly says, analizamos el rendimiento, no los resultados. Okay, so you got a draw, but the performance was not good. Across the board, it was not good. You gave up chances. You didn't generate a whole bunch at the other end. It was another subpar showing from the MLS Cup champions, the reigning MLS Cup champions, the team that is expected to make it to the Concacaf Champions Cup final and win it. At least that's the expectation from within. That's the goal. That's the bar. And it hasn't looked good to this point. By and large, it has not looked good. And that last night's game is not a one-off. I tweeted this earlier today. Inter Miami's played 4 games, official games in 2026. They have scored 6 goals in those 4 games, and those 6 goals have come in 2 halves. Against Orlando City in the second half of the 4-2 victory, and against DC United in the first half of the 2-1 win that we've already talked about. Those are 2 opponents that, from the outside on paper, are projected to be in the bottom half of the Eastern Conference. They're not higher level opposition. And yet, those are the 2 teams Inter Miami has scored 6 goals on. That is concerning. That is concerning heading into the weekend. It's concerning heading into next Wednesday's match. Again, I will reiterate, I expect Inter Miami to advance. But I have questions about the attack against a higher level opponent later on in that competition, in the next round or in the following round, if they make it that far. Because the attack's not showing a whole lot of life. Even Messi last night, for all the ganas that he could have, all the desire, all the will to try to dribble past players, he wasn't at his sharpest. He didn't have a great game. And I don't think anybody in the attack really did. I mean, where is Tadeo Allende? He starts yesterday instead of Matteo Silvetti. For what reason? Don't know. The question wasn't asked of Mascherano. Maybe it was a matchup thing. Maybe it was a fitness thing. Maybe it was a rotation thing. Don't know. Don't know the answer to that. But Tadeo Allende gets the start. And you barely noticed him on the field yesterday. We will talk about Germán Berterame because his introduction to the team has not been great. Look, I think, and I said this also on Twitter today, I think Berterame at some point will come good. I think he'll start scoring goals. I think he'll look more dangerous in front of the net. And he'll be more like the player that Inter Miami imagines him to be, and that the fans are waiting to see. The question is whether that version will come during this Champions Cup run or if it'll come afterwards, whether it'll come on time or too late. Because Inter Miami needs him to find his best footing now as quickly as possible. And maybe that's slightly unfair to Berterame. He's changing not only countries, leagues, styles, teammates. I mean, it's a whole new ball game for him, but he is a professional player. He's expected to perform and produce. Those all can be reasons or things that go against you, but you're paid to produce, right? And he has not produced in front of goal. Look, got to be fair. He has, with his high press, given Inter Miami, or his ability to press and press high up the field, has given Inter Miami a different dimension to the attack. Something they didn't have with Luis Suarez. Obviously, we know from watching Luis Suarez over the last couple of years, even in 2024, when he had a better season than last year, he puts in an effort, he tries, but he's physically very limited. He can't do it for sustained stretches. Well, Berterame, younger, fresher legs, more energetic legs, he can press well. And I know, just listening to Mascherano's remarks that he values that ability to press. And I'm sure it's one of the reasons why they went out and signed him, in addition to his goal scoring abilities, because he has helped force turnovers in these last 2 games that have led to goals for Inter Miami, right? So while he's not directly putting the ball in the back of the net, he is helping to create opportunities that lead to goals or just goals outright with his ability to harass defenders, chase them down, make them uncomfortable. But obviously that can't just be it, right? No one's just signing a striker just because he can press well. You're also signing a striker because you think he can score goals. And Berterame has not done that yet. He had a chance yesterday. I don't know if I want to call it in front of an empty goal, but he had it in front of he had a good chance. He had a good looking opportunity, but a defender made a last ditch effort. It looks like the defender got a piece of it and maybe pushed it over the goal line instead of keeping it on frame. Referee said the shot just went wide. I didn't get a clear look at it either way, so I can't. I mean, my opinion would be that the defender did not touch it. I mean, Berterame makes the gesture that he did touch it, but he didn't overly argue it. It didn't seem like he was super convinced that the defender actually got the touch on the ball. And maybe it was just him trying to save face because he shot wide. I don't know. Maybe the defender did get a piece of it. I couldn't tell clearly from the camera angles. I know it looks like on some of the camera angles it maybe, but I can't say with certainty. All the same, he has no goals through 4 matches, and that has to change for Inter Miami to have a chance at being who they want to be this year. Because maybe you can get by Nashville with just some Messi magic, or I don't know, a mistake from Nashville. But again, against higher level opposition, you need to be firing on all cylinders. And right now, the attack, including Berterame, is not doing that. Berterame, you can tell that his understanding, that chemistry, el entendimiento is not there, right? He's not on the same page with his teammates. It's not like they fully understand each other, which is, again, understandable given where he is in his adaptation period. Look, for some players it clicks right away. For some players it does not. It takes some time. Messi and him haven't been able to link up and be the attacking duo threat that they should be, or that on paper you would think they'd be in the MLS. But again, Mascherano has to figure out a way to get that going quickly. Because if not, Inter Miami's Champions Cup run might be short-lived. Again, I reiterate, I think Inter Miami gets through next week. But in the latter rounds, Galaxy Cool 32 says, what about Germán Berterame? Well, giving you the whole spiel here. I think he'll end up the season with goals. I think he'll make a better impression. Hopefully for Inter Miami's sake, it's sooner rather than later. Messi and him have to find a way to connect. Mascherano needs to work on that as much as he can over the next few days and the next couple of weeks, because that is imperative. That is vital to Inter Miami's chances to winning this whole thing. If you have Berterame who can score, then you give defenders somebody else to worry about. That frees up Messi to do more Messi things. Berterame doesn't get going, you can hone in on Messi a little bit more. You can surround him a little bit more with defenders, and it becomes a tougher task for him, as it was last night. Kudos to Nashville for the defensive performance they put forth, and the energy and the fight and the tactical discipline. I mean, Inter Miami did have some chances, but not a whole lot. But again, an ugly night for Inter Miami from a performance standpoint. From a result, 0-0 doesn't look that bad, although when you take into account the away goals, it stings a little bit. But Inter Miami was outshot 11-5. Nashville finished with 5 shots on target. Inter Miami with 1. Inter Miami wins the possession battle 59-41. Yet again, didn't do a whole lot with that possession. And again, as we've said on other pods earlier this season, possession without production, possession without penetration isn't good enough. You can knock the ball around at midfield or 3/4 of the field um, and not generate anything, then that doesn't do you any good, right? You could be 3/4 de cancha, tocándola de lado a lado, lateral pass, lateral pass, lateral pass. But if you can't find that penetrating ball, if you can't find that run off the back shoulder, if you can't put it together, then you're going to have a tough time. And Inter Miami to this point hasn't been convincing from a performance standpoint. It's big decisions for Mascherano. Does he change it up a little bit next week? Does he maybe sit Berterame? Does he go with maybe a front three of Messi as the false nine, Tayo Allende on one side, Matteo Silvetti on the other side? The front three that we saw in that playoff push to the MLS Cup final last year, is that something he explores or considers? I think it has to be on the table as an option because right now, this moment for Inter Miami, patience is not a luxury that they have, right? You're probably going to need some patience for Berterame to find his footing with his new teammates, but you don't have that luxury. And if he's not providing enough overall and the attack's just not clicking, then you gotta at least have it on the table to maybe explore other options. Because you saw what the other front three could provide. Yes, different moment. Allende was in a different form. Silvetti wasn't coming off a little niggling injury like he is this year. But it has to be considered. I think you have to consider it. Now, if you put Messi as the false nine again, the trouble is who gets him the ball, right? Because last year, you had Jordi Alba bombarding up the left wing, whipping in those crosses to Messi that we know. And you also had Sergio Busquets, who even though he lost a step, could still hit some good passes, break lines, and find El Diez. You don't really have that either. And that's another part of this team. I think it's another element that is detrimental to the attack right now. Velasco Segovia is the player that they're giving some of those responsibilities to in the midfield, to be the guy that genera juego or generates play or tries to find the pass in between the lines. And he's done an okay job, but I don't think he's been great at it. I think he's been good, but not great at it. DePaul has also shown moments with the ball where he hit some nice passes, right? There was one that Tres Dedos, I think last night, one where he hit it outside of the foot and found a teammate. He's played some good balls, and he's also been given some of those responsibilities from midfield to try to help generate play and progress the ball further up the field. But they're both, Segovia like DePaul, inconsistent with it. They're not, I want to say perfect because Busquets wasn't perfect, but they're not at a high enough level consistently enough for Inter Miami to not feel that absence more so far this season. Replacing Busquets was always going to be tough. It's proving very tough for Inter Miami right now. I mean, David Ayala was brought in. He was the player who characteristically, from a characteristic standpoint, característicamente, is the one that's close to Busquets, right? In terms of style. Not saying in terms of quality, but in terms of style and traits. And obviously he, his dad passed and he was away from the team for a little bit. He's back with the team, but he has not played. Maybe he still has to get his mind right, which would be understandable here. That leaves Segovia and DePaul to do the heavy lifting in terms of generating play, because Yannick Bright's not that type of player. You don't ask Yannick Bright to try to generate play. You ask Yannick Bright to break things up. And if he gets the ball, move it as quickly as possible to somebody else, right? He's not the one that's bringing the ball forward either on the dribble or trying to play those forward passes. It's on DePaul and Segovia, and they've had good moments, but they've also had bad moments. And for Inter Miami, that is a challenge. That is also hurting them. You see Messi, how far deep he's dropping. at times to pick up the ball. Clearly, it's not getting to him as much as he would like. He's not getting the touches he wants, so he drops to try to find it. He has that tactical freedom, but that tactical freedom obviously is clearly showing. Ball's not getting to him, because if the ball's getting to him at higher parts of the field, he's not dropping. He stays in more advanced places. Tabaquito for you with a fantastic profile picture, Messi, and I don't know who that is. I don't know if that's Tabaquito, but it's an old man with a Santa Claus beard and a cigar and a do-rag. It's pretty cool. I don't know if that's ChatGPT made or not, but it looks pretty much AI. But Tabaquito for you says, I don't want anyone to criticize Berte. This is a proven player that is playing in a team, not set up to play vertical. You have vertical players and no Busi, nor Alba. Maschi keeps playing the tiki-taka. Let's see what else. Nader 10LM says, honestly, I think they should have just waited for the summer and brought Lewandowski or Griezmann. And for this year's CCC, Concacaf Champions Cup, they could have brought some good striker, but not as a DP. So while on paper, maybe you could present that as an option, realistically in MLS, it's just not fathomable. It's just not realistic. Because it's a league with a salary cap. So if you brought someone in now, for him to be of good enough quality, you're going to have to pay something. Or he's not going to come cheap. Or he's going to take up a bunch of your roster budget. So if you sign someone in the offseason, you're probably not signing someone in the winter offseason. You're probably not able to sign someone in the summer. And if you wait, well, then you've waited until after Concacaf Champions Cup. Inter Miami clearly put all the chips on the table. They pushed it forward. I mean, there were reports they wanted to sign Dennis Bouanga, and that didn't come to pass. So it's Berterame that is the attacking addition, but he's not proven in MLS, and it's taking him some time. We'll see how Mascherano does, because that was one of my questions. As much as you can put it on Berterame, or the loss of Busquets, or the loss of Alba, right? Mascherano's job is to put his players in the best position to succeed. His job is to unlock the players and get them performing at high levels. That is his job. And there were questions last year going into the playoffs, and even at the start of the playoffs, about whether Inter Miami was going to be able to get the job done, because they were better than they were at the start of the year, but they still looked beatable. And it wasn't until Nashville SC hizo el reclamo oficial, they made the official complaint to MLS about Luis Suarez kicking out at Andy Najar, that Suarez was suspended, and that Mascherano was forced to make a change, which produced a great initial result and performance, and which then snowballed into being the team that ran all the way through to the MLS Cup final and winning that trophy. If it wasn't for that kick out, you probably would have seen Luis Suarez continuing to start, and you would have still probably seen the same issues from Inter Miami. And maybe they don't win MLS Cup, but we don't have that crystal ball to say whether that would have happened or not. But we do know that the team left something to be desired. They left something to be desired in terms of being a fully functioning team that clicked on all cylinders. It was not until that suspension happened that things improved remarkably. So Mascherano has to find a way. He has to find a way. I mean, Messi gets paid the big bucks. Messi also has to put the team on his back like he has before, and also find a way. I mean, they are the two biggest protagonists for Inter Miami going into next week. That doesn't mean that other players are absolved or they are not responsible for having to put in a performance. Absolutely. But Messi and Mascherano are the biggest protagonists, the ones with the most on their shoulders heading into that game, that do or die game against Nashville SC. This is what Mascherano said Last night, after the draw with Nashville SC, when asked about what will decide next week's return leg, which will be played at Fort Lauderdale, at the stadium in Fort Lauderdale. I don't know what it's being called this day. I think it's being called Inter Miami CF Stadium. But just to make it clear, the stadium formerly known as Chase Stadium, formerly known as Drive Pink Stadium, the one based in Fort Lauderdale there on Commercial Boulevard.
Bueno, creo que este tipo de series va a estar en los detalles. Al final, cuando son series tan igualadas, donde dos equipos compiten como compitieron hoy, cualquier detalle te deja adentro o cualquier detalle te deja fuera. Creo que dependerá mucho de eso, dependerá mucho de la intensidad que juguemos en nuestra casa. Claramente nos hubiese gustado convertir algún gol para tener alguna ventaja también con el tema del gol, pero bueno, fue importante no conceder. Al final, en nuestro pensamiento es tratar de ganar el partido en casa para poder pasar. Está en nuestras manos y trataremos de hacer todo lo mejor posible para poder pasar el miércoles que viene.
So Mascherano there talks about the details. It'll be the details that decides next week's return leg. That's what it's going to come down to. That he says, we would have liked to had the away goal, but that we didn't concede is a plus, and that they'll come out looking to win the game next week, obviously. Look, again, at home, Inter Miami, I expect them to play better with the crowd behind them. I don't know what the turnout's going to be like. Some of these midweek games in general are just not a great sell for Major League Soccer teams. Midweek games in Concacaf Champions Cup are an even tougher sell because they're not part of the season ticket package. Some people, general audience, not saying you listeners or you viewers here, but some people in the general audience don't understand different competitions, right? They're like, wait, what is this? No, they're just used to a regular season and a regular season only. They're not used to, regular season, there's a cup competition here and a competition there. So that it's hard for them to wrap their heads around the importance of it. But this is a very important game. Already at the beginning of the season, a hugely important game. Don't know what the turnout will be, but whatever turnout there is, I'm sure it'll help Inter Miami push on. I expect Inter Miami, due to their jerarquía, due to their know-how, and their quality, to get past Nashville in some way, shape, or form. But it is a do-or-die game. Big decisions will have to be made. A lot will be analyzed. A lot will be scrutinized, whether they win or whether they lose. Before that game, because again, we will preview that game more properly probably Monday of next week. I don't know who will be the co-host with me on Monday, but somebody will be hopefully with me on Monday to preview that game because hugely important. But we'll quickly switch gears here. Actually, we'll look at a couple more comments. Tabaquito for you says, if Berta had been in LAFC, which plays direct, he would have likely had 2 goals by now. Nader 10 LM says, do you think Maschi gets fired if they lose to Nashville? I don't think he gets fired. I think his job security is pretty safe here. He's part of the project. I'm sure there will be plenty of calls for his head if he doesn't win. I'm sure, even though publicly they might not say it publicly, they might vouch for him. I would imagine Jose Mas behind the scenes would probably start looking at one another. I'm not saying they would want to do it, but I think the question starts to get this question starts to get thought of. The seed gets planted in their head if they get eliminated next week. But let's see what happens. I think Inter Miami will take care of business there. It's later rounds that concern me when it comes to this Champions Cup run. Because Mascherano has not necessarily been the most creative tactically. He's not been the most astute tactically. I mean, look at this year alone, right? The first half against LAFC, he makes a substitution at halftime. And I think after that game, it was either after that game or after the Orlando game, but he pretty much acknowledges that when you make a substitution at halftime, it shows that the game plan you had in mind didn't work out, right? You got it wrong. Essentially what he said, and I agree with that stance. I think I said it to host of the week before. Mascherano actually said that comment. But he got a first half sub after the first half against LAFC, where they end up losing 3-0 and didn't play well in the first half of that game, or very well. And then against Orlando City, the same thing. Right? He's forced to make a substitution at halftime because Inter Miami's down 2-0. So he hasn't covered himself in glory here. Inter Miami is not playing particularly well. And again, we know about the absences. I've already touched on the absences, but you can't just say you only win if you have Messi plus Alba plus Busquets plus De Paul. Like, it's easier for anyone to win that way, for any coach. And I'm fully of the belief that, look, it's not an easy job to coach superstars with egos, big egos. That's not an easy job. So I don't want to take that away from Mascherano. But it's in the escasez. This is when you're in a shortage of quality that you really see what that coach is about. And I'm not saying Inter Miami has a shortage of quality, because they still have Messi, De Paul, Berterame, Segovia, Silvetti, Allende. They still have plenty of talent. But it can't be an excuse that because you don't have Alba and Busquets that you've lost any sort of idea for how to play. I mean, obviously you're going to take a step back in certain aspects, but you have to find a way as a coach to, with the players you do have, keep it rolling, keep it going. Y le está costando a Mascherano. It's proving difficult at this early stage. He's got a big game on his hands next week. Taquito for you says that was Orlando where he said that. Yeah, that would make sense, because I did just say that. I said it a week before, and I had said it in analysis and reaction to the first game of the season, where I believe he took out Ian Frey and brought in Facundo Mura, if my memory serves me correctly. Against Orlando, he switched the formation. Can't remember who he brought in that game, though. Can't remember off the top of my head who came in at halftime. All right, so quickly to switch gears before we wrap up, because there's nobody else here, no other co-host here with me. There's no reason we should go over an hour and 10 minutes. No yellow cards or red cards will be issued this week, hopefully. Inter Miami will play. They travel to take on Charlotte FC this weekend, Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern at Bank of America Stadium. Turf field, sandwiched in between this Nashville series. It's an Eastern Conference match. Inter Miami probably needs the injection of confidence. Probably needs to find better patterns of play and rhythm. But I don't think this is the game to do that. Because if you play your starters again, or most of your starters again, on Saturday, you're essentially playing, what is that? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You'll be playing 3 games in 8 days with the same group against a Nashville side that will be motivated, hungry. I just think you have to rotate. You know what's at stake next week. I think this game against Charlotte is a throwaway game. If you get something out of it, a draw or a win, shit, that's great. You know, you got something out of it. But if you lose it, no big deal. Plenty of games and a whole long MLS season to make up for it. If you start your regulars, I don't want to say you're going to burn them into the ground because we're at the beginning of the season. But if you don't give them optimal chances to be fresh for the next Wednesday, then I think that's a disservice to what you're trying to accomplish. So I imagine that we will see a rotation. I don't know if we'll see a full 11 rotation, but I could see, maybe half of the starters coming out of the lineup, including Messi. We did not talk about Luis Suarez as an option for next Wednesday's game. I don't think he's an option to start. I know some people are already starting to make those claims or state those opinions out there in the World Wide Web. I don't think that's an option. I think if you think Suarez should start, you have short-term memory because you have completely forgotten what the team looked like last year when he was not able to press. And yes, he can pass a good ball, and I'm not saying he doesn't have skill and an understanding with Messi, but it's clear he has lost a major step physically. So from a defensive standpoint, you lose something. And from an attacking standpoint, unless the ball is perfectly to his feet, then you also lose something because there's been balls played to him that are, within distance, and he hasn't been able to reach them or turn them into quality opportunities. So I don't think he's a realistic option to start this next Wednesday. I think he's a realistic option to start this weekend. So if I have to give you a predicted lineup for what I think, again, it's not inside information. We haven't spoken to Mascherano as media since last night, where there were no questions about his plans for this weekend. We won't even actually get to ask him whether there will be a rotation or not because he's not doing media between last night and Saturday's game. Inter Miami's taking a different media approach this year, and they're having Mascherano speak less. So even though before games, normally you want to hear from the coach because he's the one that will give you injury updates. He's the person that's most newsworthy in terms of an interview, usually. El más noticioso. He's not speaking again this week until after the game. So, different approach. So, less for us to provide you in terms of concrete information. But I guess that means we'll just have to speculate and usar nuestras sensaciones. We'll have to use our sensations, our thoughts, our reading between the lines more to give you listeners and viewers more to talk about. We'll also dig and try to get our info from other places, but clearly Inter Miami has taken a step back in that regard this year. So no update. We won't know what's up with Peluca unless we see him out with the team on Friday. I don't think he plays. I don't think he's going to make it. That's not information. That's just my sensation. Let's see. Charlotte FC plays at home. Let's see. They are in 6th place in the Eastern Conference. 1 win, 1 draw, and a loss. 4 goals scored, 5 goals against, -1 goal differential. Inter Miami is 2 wins, 0 draws, and a loss. 6 goals scored, 6 goals against. But again, we've talked about when those 6 goals happen. All right, let's go. Back. Your goalkeeper, I think it'll be Rocco Rios Novo. I think Dane St. Clair is still the starter. He had some good moments in the game against Nashville, better than he's looked in other matches so far in his Inter Miami stint. I still believe he's the number one, even though people are starting to question it, like some of you here. But I think it'll be Rocco Rios Novo on Saturday. Hey, your back four. Ian Frey, Gonzalo Luján, Noah Allen, and Sergio Reguilón. Sergio Reguilón is back with the team. He was on the matchday roster. He did not feature. He's able to play. Is he able to start and give you a full 90? Maybe not. But you can at least try to get him some minutes and see how he's doing to start to integrate him back into the rotation and maybe into the starting lineup in the coming couple of weeks. If not, you have some some players from the second team who are interesting prospects who could maybe start, get a debut. So that's an option. I do think Noah Allen starts at center back in this game with Peluca Falcon probably out. Your midfield three. Ayala has to start. Rodrigo de Paul. All right, so Ayala, let's go Ayala, Yannick Bright, and it's tough. This is tough. Ayala, Bright, and DePaul. DePaul gets the start. And then your front three, Luis Suarez up top. Santi Morales on one side, and one of Silvetti or Allende. Probably Silvetti starts because he didn't start this week. So not a whole lot of starters there, clearly, from my prediction. Maybe that's too heavy of a rotation. I was going off of my noggin. I'm curious to hear what you guys think in terms of the starting lineup. Maybe Berterame gets to start, maybe if he's not necessarily going to start next Wednesday, then maybe he's an option to start this weekend. But I think that would be too telling of a sign if a lot of the other starters aren't there and he is. And I don't think Mascherano wants to reveal any more than is necessary this weekend, just knowing how he normally approaches things. So probably not. I think Luis Suarez. This is a game for Luis Suarez right here. This is a game for him to get some minutes and get some burn. David Ruiz could be an option in that midfield. So maybe you have Ayala, Bright, and Ruiz that you can take the Paul off. Clearly that would make for wholesale changes. Daniel Pinter could be an option, but I think he's more likely to come off the bench than to start. I expect heavy rotation, clearly. Let's look at a few comments before we wrap up here. King Callum says, Silvetti, Allende, and Messi is the best front three. We all saw how good the team was in the playoffs. It was arguably the scariest front three in the MLS. I'm with you that was a quality front three that gave you a good balance between skill, gave you a good balance between verticality, the ability to play direct, right? It freed up Allende completely because with more teams dropping to cover Messi, open up spaces in behind. That allowed Allende to play more to his strengths with just his run into the open space and try to finish. Obviously, it helps to have Busquets who can ping a ball from deep. You don't have that anymore, but I do agree that I think that's something that needs to be at least explored by Javier Mascherano and his technical staff. Maybe they don't do it, but it has to be explored because Mascherano talks about how the team is possession-based, and he's mentioned multiple times this season how the team is attack-minded and they like to go at the other teams. But that's not just in words, and that can't just be in your game plan. It also has to be in your personnel, right? That also has to be by the players you choose to step on the field. Because Yannick Bright and Rodrigo de Paul are not the most creative players with the ball. They're not the best with the ball. Again, de Paul has shown some moments and flashes in being given more responsibility in possession and into the attack, but it's still not his bread and butter. So at some point, you're going to have to maybe take out a Bright to bring in an Ayala, or take out a forward like Berterame, who's very good at pressing, but you bring in somebody like Silvetti to give you an extra element in the attack. I mean, the players chosen also tell you a good bit about the coach's strategy. So we'll see. We'll see what Mascherano does next week. Tabaquito forces in their defense. Let's not forget they have been traveling for over 2 months. Well, whose fault is that? Whose fault is it that they decided to go travel across continents during preseason? Again, these can't be excuses. And if they get eliminated next week, they don't justify anything. And Miami has to take care of business. That's what they're expected. They're expected to do. King Column asks, is Ayala creative? Ayala's not creative per se, but he's again deemed more in the he's more of a Busquets type of player than more of a Yannick Bright type of player. And again, I'm not saying comparing them in terms of quality. I'm just in terms of their style of play. He's more of a player that's good with the ball than a player that's good without the ball, right? We can all, I think, agree Yannick Bright is better without the ball than he is with the ball. Busquets was the opposite, right? Better with the ball than without the ball. Ayala is of that cloth. I'm not saying he's of that caliber. I'm not saying he's of that skill. We'll get a look at him probably this weekend against Charlotte FC. Does Inter Miami beat Charlotte FC? I'm going to say no. I say they lose. How much? I've actually not done too bad this year with predictions. If they go as heavily rotated as I think, I mean, some players will come off the bench in the second half. To 3-1. They lose 3-1. That's my prediction. Okay. We will leave it there. Thank you guys for sticking with me on this solo episode of Miami Total Football. I can never transition back to Spanish that well at the end. It's always like me cuesta. It's like Mascherano with starting games. Me cuesta. A ver, let me try again. Radio the show. There we go. Came out that time. We'll be back on Monday for sure. Maybe Sunday, but probably Monday. Monday probably will be the day where we do the preview pod. We'll be 2 days removed from the Charlotte FC match. We'll be able to focus on Inter Miami versus Nashville in an already do or die scenario for Inter Miami. So don't forget to give us a like, comment, share, subscribe. I did mention this a few weeks ago. I don't want people to confuse it for this coming game, but at some point when Inter Miami goes over to Miami Freedom Park, which is now called the New Stadium and U Stadium, at some point this season, Miami Total Football Radio will be giving tickets away to some games. So stay tuned for that. I still have to find a system that makes it fair for all of you that want to try to win those tickets. I'm working on that. Maybe I'll ask ChatGPT. But yeah, stay tuned for that. Won't be the case for next week's game, but for the games at New Stadium later on in the season, it will be. So that does it for this week's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the game against Charlotte. Let's see if Inter Miami makes some progress. I am Franco Panizo. You have been watching or listening to Miami Total Football Radio, the show. That was a good one. We'll talk to you guys in a few days.